It's the 18th of August, and this is your News Bite brought to you by eNCA.com. I'm Marcelle Gordon, and in your news today, tens of thousands of students improperly benefited from NSFAS funds. Westbury families cry out against the lack of political will to fight gangsterism, and Kolisi in doubt for the opening test against the All Blacks. The hits just keep coming for NSFAS. The student aid scheme is now facing serious scrutiny after a public protector investigation found that more than 40,000 students were improperly funded to the tune of about 5.1 billion rand. These students were spread across 76 institutions. At a briefing on the findings, Public Protector Koleka pointed to information that the SIU presented to SCOPA, complaints received by her office, and engagements with stakeholders, which she now believes builds evidence of possible systemic maladministration.
Of particular significance were the findings reported by the Special Investigating Unit to Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, indicating that under Proclamation 88 of 2022, investigations identified more than 40,000 students across 76 higher education institutions who had been improperly funded to an estimated value of approximately 5.1 billion rands, with recoveries exceeding 2 billion rands. Considered together with the complaints received, stakeholder engagements and other oversight findings, these developments strengthened the Public Protector's view that the matter disclosed a prima facie evidence of probable systemic maladministration warranting investigation under Section 182 of the Constitution.
Another week, another series of funerals for families in the Joburg suburb of Westbury who can only watch as more and more of their young people lose their lives to gang violence. And the families they leave behind say there's simply no political will to tackle the scourge. Just this weekend, 4 young men, the youngest just 15 years old, were shot and killed, while a 5th survived the attack. eNCA's Nabila Sheikh spoke to community activist Jefferson Johnson, who lost his 20-year-old nephew, and Shana Liners, who now has to bury her 22-year-old son, Caston.
On my status this morning, I said I thought we'd never get to a point again whereas we go through such a tragedy, but unfortunately it happened again.
This is breaking me because last week we buried my brother son. He got shot in Reveille, and now it's my turn to bury my son. This is too much. Those people must, things must stop. We can't lose our children like this. And Kirsten wasn't even a gangster.
Community leaders warn that high-caliber weapons are playing a growing role in the violence.
Yes, there's been multiple shootings. For the month of July and August alone, we're calculating about 22 deaths. That's 22 young lives that has been taken through this gun violence.
It is becoming actually progressively worse. And when I say progressively worse, is the number of people that are young men that are being killed at a time. So it becomes mass killings now. It's no more one there and one there.
Meanwhile, Parliament's Police Portfolio Committee will begin its inquiry into gang-related violent crime with a summit on Wednesday. The event is aiming to bring together those living and working on the front lines, including victims, community organizations, and anti-gang activists. The committee started its work by being hosted by Lieutenant General Nche Nkwanazi in his role as chief of the SAPS Anti-Organized Crime Task Team.
I think there are a lot of serious problems in the Cape Flats that are social problems that need to be addressed. Coming up with an operation on the ground and running the streets is one thing, but to get into the household and fix the problem from within, I think is the solution.
But how are we going to do that, though?
No, that's why we need everyone to be on board. Ours is going to make sure that we're going to bring everyone on board through the coordinated structure. So that as we are fighting the criminals, investigations are running, the courts are assisting us to make sure those that are arrested are not released on bail.
The Police's ad hoc committee is busy refining its almost 800-page draft parliamentary report, and now possible perjury charges are on the table. Political parties have formalized their submissions regarding alleged false testimonies by KwaZulu-Natal violence monitor Mary de Haas and Cedric Nkabinde, the embattled police minister Nche's former chief of staff. At the time of Mary de Haas's appearance before the police ad hoc committee in November last year, members of parliament argued that her correspondence with Nche on the disbandment of the political killings task team had a significant influence on his decision to push ahead with the move, and so the validity of her testimony must be questioned. Here's the EFF's Leanne Matthys.
A recommendation that we must look into whether there was an act of perjury. It must be referred to that, and that would be under recommendation or findings. But it is true that Ms. Diaz willfully misled the committee. When we started there, we were referring to her as professor, as doctor. She did not correct us at any point, and it was only when we specifically asked her about her doctorate did she tell us that she did not have it. So if that's not willfully misleading, then I don't know what is.
Political analyst Sipho Siepe has called out President Cyril Ramaphosa for his apology over xenophobia, which has fueled anti-illegal migration protests over the last few months. The president was speaking at the closing of the SADC summit in Durban. The president confirming that the South African delegation had briefed SADC leaders on the country's migration challenges, but did so behind closed doors. He said the leaders acknowledged that migration was a complex issue which needed greater unity to address it. But Siepe says Ramaphosa should have had the courage to tell his regional counterparts that they too were at fault.
The president was speaking to what he calls friends and not visitors, and these are comrades. And one of the things that when you're faced with a regional crisis that you need to do is to be honest with your comrades, knowing full well that these are the people who politically you are aligned with. And one must understand that these countries are countries that were also under colonial rule and that are still dealing with the legacy of colonialism. But what is also true is that you need to be able to say, yes, the manner in which South Africans may have acted may have embarrassed the whole notion of continental solidarity. But at the same time, you need to go to the cause and effect. That the reason why people are flocking to South Africa is not because they dislike their places. It's because they have found their homes almost intolerable, inhabitable. And it is because of the political instability, political persecution, economic instability, economic stagnation. That these countries, if we talk about finding a solution, the solution starts with being honest about the causes. So what the president did was simply to be a very nice host. But being a nice host does not lead to dealing with the difficult issues.
The trial is underway over the murder of American music icon Tupac Shakur, who was gunned down in Las Vegas nearly 3 decades ago. Dwayne Davis, who goes by the nickname Kefi D, and was once a California gang leader, has been charged with Tupac's killing. Mitch McCann reports from the United States.
At the murder trial in Las Vegas, the prosecution opened its case on Monday by making it clear that they don't claim Kefi D was the person who pulled the trigger that killed Tupac Shakur in September 1996, but that he was the one who had the weapon ready for an associate before that person shot the rap star, an act in Nevada that still allows officials to charge Kefi D with murder. Now, the prosecutor told the jury that Kefi D made sure the shooter was armed and ready to, quote, execute their revenge, unquote, over an assault that took place on his nephew earlier that evening. Tupac was only 25 years old when he died, and including the decade since his death, has sold 75 million records. He is still thought of as a music icon across the world, and in 2023 received a posthumous star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He was killed after being shot while he was inside a vehicle hours after watching a Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas. Kefi D claimed he has immunity in this case for assisting a police investigation back in 2008, but he was charged anyway after the 63-year-old published a memoir detailing his involvement in Tupac's death, in which he wrote that he and others went looking for Tupac and record label boss Suge Knight before Tupac was shot. KVD's defence is that much of what was published in the book was fiction and an attempt to make money. In court, his lawyer, Michael Sampt, put the words BS on the screen and said KVD was known to do this. An unusual move for defence lawyers who are normally trying to prove their clients are honest people. The New York Times reports that Sampt told jurors the state cannot prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt the claim that Keefe had anything to do with first-degree murder with use of a deadly weapon. Also on Monday, jurors heard from witnesses, including a police officer who rode with Tupac to hospital and said he wouldn't reveal who shot him, only saying no, we'll take care of it. The trial could last between 4 and 6 weeks.
In other news we're keeping an eye on, President Donald Trump's approval ratings have fallen to its lowest level yet. According to the newest Reuters Ipsos poll, just 33% of respondents said they approved of the president's performance in the White House, while 64% disapproved. It's down from 35% earlier this month and lower than at any point in his current term. One of Trump's main campaign promises ahead of his re-election was making sure the U.S. avoided long-lasting wars. After 6 months of a war on Iran, which Trump had at first said could only last weeks, the survey found that only 1 in 5 Americans and just half of Republicans thought the war had been worth it. And the Matlala Commission testimony of alleged crime boss Vusimuzi Camp Matlala has been postponed to next week. Matlala has until Saturday to file his supplementary affidavit. During his testimony on Monday, Matlala invoked his right against self-incrimination on many of the questions put to him. He also described suspended EMPD chief Julius Mkhwanazi as a friend and confirmed he received a 15 million rand loan from Northwest businessman Suleiman Karim. On to the world of sports now, and Springbok captains Kolisi and prop Nche could miss the first test against New Zealand in Johannesburg on Saturday. Coach Rassie Erasmus confirming that Nche has not played since suffering a knee injury in the recent Nation Championship win over England, while Kolisi lasted just 25 minutes against Argentina earlier this month before a hammy forced him off. Paul de Villiers and Gerard Steenekamp are their likely replacements. Meanwhile, it's another one bites the dust for the visiting All Blacks. A knee cartilage injury has now forced prop Ollie Norris to return home. He's a 4th All Black after hooker George Bell, centre Billy Proctor and wing Caleb Clark to have his tour cut short by injury. And just a few weeks after he publicly criticized Gianni Infantino's plan to sell off commercial rights to FIFA's top tournaments, and Chief Operating Officer Kevin Lamour has had to vacate his office in Zurich. Lamour had refused to sign off on that big money deal, which he described as, quote, the project of one person. FIFA has confirmed Lamour's exit from the organization. At the same time, human rights organization Fair Square has urged FIFA to rule that Gianni Infantino is ineligible to seek another term as president, arguing he has already served the maximum 3 terms permitted under the body's statutes. And that's how we wrap today's News Bite. For developments in these and more, keep an eye on eNCA.com and DSTV channel 403.